Welcome to She Blaze, where we're bringing you cannabis culture from a woman's point of view. And as always, here to elevate the cannabis industry. I'm your host, Ice Dawson, Cannabis Socialite.
And I am Dasheeda Dawson, the WeedHead.
Hey, WeedHead! On today's episode of She Blaze, cannabis is riding high with decriminalization. Finally, smart corporate cannabis moves, and we're teaching you how to lobby virtually.
Woo-woo. Okay, so that sounds like a really exciting week, and I can't wait to hear about some of these smart moves. No, I'm just kidding. But of course, we have to kick things off first with our high of the week. And I'm riding high because guess what? It is 420, 420, hey. No, I mean, we're figuring it out at home, of course, and we're dealing with the Rona, of course, but packages still arrive, of course. So I'm super excited to be riding high with Taylor and Tess. So Taylor and Tess is actually a Black-owned CBD beauty brand. I kind of just stumbled upon it, to be perfectly honest, through the same kind of cannabis communities. And they were really, really awesome enough to send over a little care package for me to check out. And I've been using it and my skin is amazing, y'all. Well, first of all, let me just talk about the fact that it came with this cute waterproof pouch. Of course, normally when you're a brown girl and you have makeup, you're like, see something white, you're like, oh my God. But it wipes off so well. It is waterproof. And this is just a pouch. I'm very excited because I was able to jump in. It came with a cleansing bar, which is actually an African soap base, which to be honest, that's something new in the cannabis space.
I know. I haven't even seen nothing like that.
I mean, well, we did say Black woman owned, yes, but the branding is very, very upscale and very universal. If you go to Taylor and Tess, the green is still green, but it's a very regal and green, and that's what I love about it. It reminds me a little bit of Oz. Plus, I think they put some thoughtfulness into the packaging and the containers. So in the buff is obviously in the buff. You want to use the cleansing bar. You can use it for your face or your body. It is very thick, and I love that it lathered so much. But I'm gonna be real. When I read my review, I did get soap in my eye. So it's like the first time in a long time that I was cleaning my face, and I did that. And every time I added water ice, it kept like lathering more, you know. So it was one of those things where, because African soap is thick and it creates a little bit of an initial film, you have to rinse well. So you may want to do that in the shower, but my daily routine at night is not in the shower. So had to put up the place a little bit just to get it done. And then you follow it up with what they call the Quickie. Now this is about to be my new best friend. The Quickie is a facial mist. It is a toner and it smells delightful. First of all, everything smells delightful, but this really does. And what I love about it is it really came just like this. There was no extra box, no extra packaging, but it still feels secure. Again, love the regal look of this sort of emerald green. And then the fact that you can turn and spin, and this is the spray. And real talk, like if we had Coachella going on, like this is the thing you want to do a quick quickie refresh. It can help with setting, I feel like, probably a little bit of makeup, but more than anything else for folks like myself, where you just have oily skin throughout the day, I think this is something that would be very helpful. And then
it's a lot easier to carry around than those doggone blot papers.
Girl, I mean, first of all, I feel like sometimes every time I pull one out, even though I don't like roll joints and smoke joints anymore, that's the first thing I think about is like, we should be putting flour in there. Okay. Because that's what it looks like, right? Then I realized that I probably could just take the paper from the little raws and blot my face too.
Same thing.
But yes, and I'm just impressed because again, it's very well done. It smells delightful. Last, and the piece de la resistance for me is they have a cream. It's supposed to be a night cream, but your girl's gonna be wearing it during the day too. And it does have just a lot of great essential oils, including that lavender hits you. And whether it's the morning or it's the evening, it is so relaxing. And for someone like myself, whose brain is always on, I'm constantly thinking about what's the next thing that we have to do, or what we're, who I'm supposed to be emailing, who I'm supposed to be talking to. It just relaxed my soul for like 2 seconds. And I know we were talking about the fact that some of the terpenes in lavender are also found in cannabis. And that was one of the things that I just thought to myself. Linalool is that terpene, by the way, but that was one of the things that I thought to myself, that this is an example that even though that CBD is doing my skin well, but the smell really made me feel so good out the gate. So that's Taylor and Tess. I'll definitely be writing up more, in-depth review, but that is what I'm riding high on. And I had to share it with our She Blaze listeners and followers because I want y'all to check it out. There are not a lot of Black-owned CBD companies, period. I come from the beauty space as a former director for Victoria's Beauty. I ran a beauty business online, and these are the type of contraptions we used to play with all day. This would have been a little like throwing your bag on the go perfume or spritzer. So this type of packaging is definitely front of the industry as far as innovation is concerned. And I love that we're bringing it with the African soap, y'all, because I miss that, being from Brooklyn, being able to go right to downtown Brooklyn, get a little shea butter and a little African black soap. And so, yeah.
Who you telling? I mean, literally, and the real African black soap, not the one you buy at Walmart that is generically made.
I don't know what's at Walmart. I'm gonna be 100%, but I definitely think...
I mean, it's at Target too. I mean,
exactly, right?
It's at the beauty supply store, Target, Walmart, but it's all like some generic African black soap, if you ask me.
They're definitely trying to capitalize on what we made it a trend. It was you buy it off the street, buy it from a guy, sort of the same way grandma, she used to buy fruits and vegetables right off the truck, off the street. In truth, I feel like we probably should be buying our cannabis a little bit like that too. Like your nose knows if you're buying good, fresh shea butter, right?
I mean, in truth, I am buying it off the street. What you talking about?
My bad. So I gotta toss it to you. What are you high on this week?
Well, I am high on some banana kush. Really excited to get 420 popping. I actually haven't been smoking any blunts and any joints. So I've been basically just, holding it down with my glass devices. So I'm ready to roll up and smoke a high hemp. And I'm waiting for 420 to do that. So I'm super excited about, sustaining and waiting till 420 to smoke a blunt.
Okay, well, I have to be the big sis.
Your sound actually went out. Sorry, big sis. Your sound went out.
Internet is a little bit unstable. I apologize. We in the Rona. Everybody's using the internet. Am I back? I hope I'm back. But yes, I'm being a big sister. And of course, I want you to be as safe as possible. So I'm happy that you're practicing social distancing and really protecting yourself with the immediate things that CDC say you can do and should do to protect yourself. But of course, Doctors for Cannabis Regulation, we put out a statement and we're pushing everyone to kind of move as much away from smoking and vaping, especially smoking the things with the paper. So enjoy it like a cigar on the day to celebrate. But I appreciate that you've been abstaining. I appreciate that you have been really putting that effort in for this time period.
I have, and social distancing is whack because I want to go out and shake my twerk it. But, so last year at 420, remember the dab and granny came over and told me that I had the best ass.
That's right. We would go down there and Granny. Oh, yes. We were at National Cannabis Festival.
I know. And she would love this ass too this year because I've been working out.
That you are hilarious.
Yeah, I'm full. But first, before we ride high into all of the great things going on in cannabis, I do have to talk about some not so great news with our first hot topic, which we're going to throw it to Michigan, because Michigan has kind of always been a hot mess during this legalization process. But, we thought that they were really understanding the gap between adult use and medical marijuana by having their caregivers run in place until they can actually get their license holders to provide the products patients need. And surprise, surprise, Michigan recreational retailers will be prohibited from using products from caregivers, most specifically flower. And so this is a real sad time, because I don't know if our followers know this, but caregivers actually make up 60% of the cannabis being sold on the medical and recreational side. And we talked about this a little bit earlier in the season, where Michigan gave their caregivers a warning to tell them that by October 1st, you will not be able to contribute to the legal market. Well, they decided that adult use had enough of caregivers' flower, and they can only be providing flower for medical patients. Now, they didn't wait till October 1st. They're doing it now.
Yeah. I don't know who's making the decisions over there.
Marijuana Regulatory Agency.
Yes, I know who's making the decisions, of course, and I'm talking about who specifically rose their hand, was like, we got enough weed. No, y'all don't. First of all, Michigan, by the way, is one of the few states that had a really big medical marijuana program. By that, I mean over 300,000 patients that had been technically certified. So the caregiver system that you call out that represents 60% of the flower market, certainly within Michigan, is a really important network of individuals who are essentially cultivating flower and or procuring it from cultivations, right, to provide to the market. And usually it was, like in Arizona, it's a caregivers are assigned individuals who are a part of the medical program, and that you can be connected to not treatment centers, but to certification centers in Michigan. But Michigan has, like you said, been a hot mess for a while. I'm not sure who's doing the calculation, because especially now that we are in a more quarantine situation, I went from I can't weigh to now I'm like, that look a little bit like a grain. That look a little bit like a, okay. So to me, I've always known metrics, of course, but when you are listening to rap and you're listening to sort of this stereotype, OZ, a zip, always sounds like a lot. And in reality, seeing it in person is not a lot. I mean, I can actually hold it in my hands. It's not that much cannabis. And when you're in a quarantine situation where you're buying bulk and you want to, because you don't want to keep going back out, it's even more so like daunting to see how wrong people are. I am a microdoser, and an ounce of cannabis flower is not a lot of flower to me. And so I can only imagine if you are requiring heavier usage. To me, it's about, again, ignorant people or people who have no idea about the real science of cannabis being the folks to make the decisions on how much cannabis is needed for a market. Even what happens to flower after. If you're in the adult use market, we know that there are a lot of processing and manufacturing steps that happen after, the flower gets to.
You actually froze. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I do agree with what you're saying as far.
So, say that again.
I was saying you have froze, so I was actually saying I do agree with what you're saying. Like, they are not really analyzing the market. They're also not looking at other states. If Illinois had a caregiver program, they wouldn't be running out of flour. So, they could have they could have set a precedent for how the cannabis industry should really move.
Absolutely, but I don't think that precedent is going to be set up in Michigan, because the people over there, for the most part, in charge, I feel like are not really about it being real medicine from the beginning. I mean, a really big medical market, but not a lot of physician network. Just my understanding, again, from my work with Doctors for Cannabis Regulation, and not a lot of people who are lawmakers really understanding it. And from a Black person's perspective, not a lot of Black leaders who have supported it either. And so we already know who's suffering, who's receiving the shortage, and not necessarily the shortage in the legal market, yes, but who's then having to make the decision to participate in the legacy market to get the things that they need, or to give off the flower they need. A caregiver is someone who's planning. Cultivation is a planful process. So you tell me in the middle, after you warn me that I had till October 1st, I plan for that, and then you change your mind. That is the part that is, to me, irresponsible and disrespectful to the professionals in the industry.
It is mad disrespectful, but they basically said that they have that their adult use ecosystem can sustain itself. So, only time will tell, especially during the quarantine, where all those peaks of people running to the dispensary to buy is actually falling off.
So maybe that's why they're worried about having too much flour, right? Because at the end of the day, you're right. People aren't going out, but then again, there are people who are buying a whole bunch at one time. So the ebbs and flows are going to be different. I guarantee the folks who lobby for that are the current operators. And I mean the big ones who think that they're going to make enough flour, and they're so worried. This is the issue. You're so worried about cornering this damn market that you're shooting yourself in the foot, bruh. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. I'm actually aggravated the more I think about it, because I feel like we already know we're going to be reporting on this come Q3, Q4, that it was a mistake, and they're trying to figure it out. But, what can you do? Folks don't listen.
They really can't. But, I'm glad you started talking about big corporations, because that definitely opens the leeway to our hot topic number 2, which is all about big corporations making smart moves, surprisingly. So Planet 13 Holdings, which we talk about Planet 13. We actually wrote an article about it, went to their cafe. It's on the WeedHead.com, just in case you want to check it out. Now, even though it wasn't as hometown people, it wasn't our favorite dispensary to go to. It is actually one of the biggest dispensaries in Las Vegas area. They made some smart moves, and I have to give them some little baby claps. So Planet 13 Holdings was in the middle of acquiring a cannabis sales license and lease dispensary in Santa Ana, California. And they ended up terminating that actual agreement and did not proceed forward, which was smart, because if they had signed the papers right now, they would have less cash in the bank. Even though they acquired a new company, they would have to deal with different changes within the actual brick and mortar that they wouldn't even be able to do. They couldn't travel from Las Vegas to California, truth be told, to even check it out. Mm-hmm. So to sever that agreement was really, really smart. And they basically made a statement saying, they have to reserve their capital right now, and that, they're one of the few cannabis businesses with cash flow in the positives. So that is also something we don't see every day in a big cannabis corporation.
Well, they definitely got the margin built into their prices to have that cash flow. I mean, I'm just being 100. That they are definitely one of the higher price. They capitalize on the fact that in the touristic world, don't get me wrong, that's across the board. If you're going to buy something that's of worth in the country, don't go to Las Vegas and go to the Strip and buy it, right? So Planet 13 being one of the largest dispensaries is that experience in Vegas. It's highly tourist driven, and you can capitalize on that in your price points because people just want cannabis. They just want to experience. So I do commend them. Their pricing strategy makes sense for that. As like you said, a local is always like, whoa, that's how much you're charging me for that.
You're like, you trying to get that trash?
Yes, but because I don't necessarily see them as a premium cultivator, but I'll give them as well kudos for making a right move. A lot of times in cannabis, I don't know, we try to get too big too fast. There's been a lot of mishaps with acquisitions and mergers in the past and announcements. And, you have usually a period of time between the time you announce it to actually having to sign it or close it. And I imagine that their close date started to get, closer in time. And what happens is you can actually you can make that petition to have a time extended. But I think that writing is on the wall. They're trying to become a multi-state operator. California is the next probable state for them to move into. And so I think on paper it sounds good, it looks good, but California is fully shut down, to your point. California is already a struggling market, another point which we've experienced. And so their approach right now that works in Vegas would have to be totally different in the California market. And that to me requires a new management team just on California alone, so it's beyond just the acquisition. It's also the execution and who's running it and how you, like you said, how do you put it together so that it actually starts to make money for you? You're going to have to put money out. And so I appreciate that they have understanding that this isn't really a fast race. This is a slow and steady that wins the race, and having cash flow, especially in this time, is really important.
Yes. So you said it. I mean, at the end of the day, we are in a pandemic. It does not make sense to make those big money moves because you wouldn't even be able to execute it appropriately. So, I'm glad I could report something so positive. So to stay on our highs, okay, I'm moving to hot topic number 3. And it's about decriminalization. And guess what state it is? Virginia.
Okay, Virginia. Oh, yeah, Virginia. Thank
Commonwealth.
God. The Commonwealth of Virginia. Yes. That's where our grandfather's from. So, it's very interesting when I hear it because I'm like, technically, that's where our roots are. We have a whole plot of land that got the Dawson name on it.
That's quite a history lesson.
Sorry.
So
how we maybe for smoke. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, we do got some land. We might need to go tell some states.
Yes,
so shout out to the governor for approving a decriminalization bill. It is called the HB 972 Marijuana Definitions, Possession, Consumption, Civil Penalties Report. That's a mouthful. Mm-hmm. But basically, this new law allows for a simple possession of cannabis to just be a civil fine of $25. And they will also create a work group, which they love to create, on studying the impacts of legalization in marijuana, as if there's not 11 states you can look at. And so this law takes into effect July 1st, you guys. So still be careful because you got a couple more months before it is a civil fine versus right now, which is a $500 fine and a misdemeanor.
I love how there's still a fine. I'm mildly impressed. So you gave the little baby claps to Planet 13. I'm giving baby claps to Governor Northam in Virginia for finally stepping into 1996 with us. But basically, I feel like, it's important for us to acknowledge at least that these are the states that have, again, overwhelming, disproportionate arrests in the way of Blacks that live in the state. We are, as a community, very fearful. Even with decriminalization, if you don't teach the law enforcement group that there is a difference, you still gonna have people getting, hunted down for what is amounting to just a smell. And then ultimately a $25 civil penalty. In New York, technically decriminalized as well, very much like a ticket, and still getting that type of aggressive takedown. I think it's about a mindset shift. I've been saying that. I wrote about it. It's a mindset shift for the people who are trying to be business owners in the industry, but also for consumers as well as the lawmakers. And so it's a step in the right direction. I'm definitely not going to act like it isn't, but it also isn't a whole new world. Like, it's not that either, because the reality is that we're still finding that the gap doesn't close enough with decriminalization. And true decriminalization is one that there is no penalty. I can just have it. You know what I mean? Like, the reality is that if I wanted to grow my own aloe vera, in aloe in the backyard, I technically could. I could use the medicine from the plant. There's nobody that would come to my house. There's nobody that would stop me on the street. There's no fine in that way. And so we need to get ourselves to the point where it becomes fully decriminalized, where it's just not anything that law enforcement has to be involved in. Because in my opinion, that's where we are starting, we start to see that line blurred on racial discrimination and racial profiling as it pertains to cannabis still.
I completely agree. With this new law, they will seal criminal records of past marijuana offenders from different employees, administrators, and school administration. And, it is difficult because when you seal it, that doesn't mean it's gone away. It just means, they have to get a deeper dig subpoena to really find out what your past is about. Well, at the same time, he also signed a bill that basically, protects medical marijuana patients in their area, though it's kind of like a remix of the hemp farm bill. They still say that their marijuana program will not be, if they have a card, they will not be arrested, prosecuted, or get in trouble. And so this is a lot, because it's the difference of being left alone to pull out your marijuana card or paying $25 for having an ounce or less on you. So
there we go with that number again. We talked about it as well, this ounce or less. I'm like, so basically they put you in a position where you could never buy bulk for cannabis, because again, we continue to just keep spreading this seed of negativity that if you have more than an ounce, then you must be a dealer. The fact of the matter is, if you really dealing, we talking about pounds.
Kilos,
right?
We talking about kilos, not pounds.
It's not. I mean, and even then, I sound like my naivete. At the end of the day, I could see myself with a couple of ounces, just because I don't want to deal with, and since I know how to take care of cannabis once it's in my possession, just because I don't want to keep dealing with going with the back and forth. It's the same way I would buy sugar. It's the same way I would buy real flour. It's a general purpose, and I would want to have different strains or cultivars. So I'm the woman that you would come to my house and you're going to see the big old jars with hella Boveda packs, right? To make sure that I'm keeping my flour the way I want, but I do have it in my possession, and I don't have to be selling it to want that, right? The same way someone who likes baking or someone who likes cooking don't have to be selling their seasoning to have a whole store of seasoning. Okay. It's part of human nature. So I really think we need to re-educate on sizing. And one of the things I thought was really helpful was one time during a lobby day, bringing in the actual size using hemp flour, bringing in what that looks like to people. And of course the hemp flour was even like, because you don't know the difference, but actually, in New York, that's legal, right? Like, there's some parts of just us not knowing, and just seeing it makes us freak out because we've been so brainwashed into believing it's so bad. So part of this up to that ounce and thinking above is about they saying it too much in these hip hop songs. You got some white folks being like, "Ooh, you know that means that they trapping." Nobody trapping no ounce. You know what I mean? You're just not. You're not. You don't got a good business model. You don't have enough product. Sorry. I would not advise.
Keep your ounce and smoke it.
Yes. Have a little party, have a little tete-a-tete with your friends, but you're not getting into the trapping business with an ounce. So I just think,
you barely getting into the trapping business with a pound. Like at this point, like, to call a spade a spade.
Right.
So, and their first step is definitely re-educating law enforcement, because a decorated sheriff already went on record saying it was a terrible idea. So his ass is gonna lock you up regardless.
Boom, there you go. So that's the other thing. It's like we still are in a situation where the police officers are on the ground. No matter what gets signed in, it's not the governor who is out there. The same way that Governor Cuomo wasn't in the streets when that young man was getting stomped by 7 police officers, which we still don't know what happened. So now we need you to tell us now what happened. We need to follow up on that, Ice. But I don't believe it either that these people are going to automatically change the mindset because the laws have changed, especially if they don't agree with the law. And they believe that this is a sound way to catch all the criminals that are happening in Virginia. But I'm happy to at least close the circle. Now we can truly say the DMV has been decriminalized, right? Because DC, Maryland has already been there in some ways. They got their own issues and their own dramas, but Virginia, at least coming along, allows us to say we got parts of that Bible Belt starting to come through. And that means a lot because a lot of Black people down there are suffering health-wise, criminalization and incarceration-wise. And, there's some wealth generation that is being missed as well. Like I said, this is the place down past that point where we actually do own land as a people.
Right. Well, I will say this, the first Southern state that legalized cannabis will be the biggest state as far as wealth in the South. So,
okay, just as that has first.
So let's move on to our hot topic number 4, because we're still talking about government officials and different bureaucracies. Remember last week we were talking about the FDA approved CBD called Epidiolex.
Pretty good. Epidiolex, okay.
Trying a little something, As you know, remember we said that it was getting removed off the FDA list, but that was not really what it was happening. When we said that it was getting removed off the FDA, it actually was the DEA loosening the constraints of Epidiolex. They had put it under Schedule 5 and was getting it really hard for people who needed it to get it. So with removing it off of all of the schedule, it now is becoming a lot easier to be prescribed.
Okay, so just to clarify, the FDA and the DEA are 2 separate entities, but they do work together. In some ways, the best description, and I can't remember what legislator told me this, but the best description on how they work together is that it's almost like the FDA is sort of the mob boss, if you will, and the DEA is the muscle. So whenever they need to go in and really deal with someone that is in violation of FDA rules or regulations, they bring in the DEA. So they are talking. They're not ever really at odds. They do work in concert a lot. And once FDA approved this drug, I believe, and I could go on record and I would challenge me if you want to, but I believe that they decided that they were immediately going to then push the DEA into how do we now, as the muscle, deal with this new entity. And the first thing that the DEA did, as you said, is they moved it from Schedule 1 to Schedule 5. A Schedule 5 is something that still requires a prescription or recommendation from a doctor or a health professional. In fact, a more broader group of health professionals now, but it's not something that you can do OTC or over the counter. Removing it from the controlled substance list means that you can absolutely do that. In a way that no other brand can. We were just talking about Charlotte's Web. Epidiolex' biggest competition in the US is Charlotte's Web. So while that's happening to GW Pharma, quiet as it's kept, they got their pockets, they're big and thick and lining. As far as with the FDA, again, I feel like this sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it's how it works. You pay for FDA approval. You pay for trials. You pay for then the application approval. So that's money. And they're now in an easy HOV lane, I call it. Easy street straight to the consumer. The only way they lose is if we, as the consumer, say, that wasn't the right way to do it. We don't appreciate or agree with the way that they were pushed through. And this isn't a US company, to be honest. And so we're not going to buy it. And so then if they don't get the sales expected, they will pull out, because pharmaceutical companies, online cannabis companies, actually care about what the bottom line is most times. But
crazy.
It is crazy, but I also think that in the flip end, you had Charlotte's Web, and while they were approving Epidiolex, FDA, they were sending cease and desist to Charlotte's Web for their claims on the website. Product is very similar. It treats the same issue in Gervais syndrome, which causes epileptic seizures. We just talked about Charlotte Fiji unfortunately passing away. That was the inspiration behind Charlotte's Web. She had Gervais syndrome. She would be the prototype for the Epidiolex patient. And so it's those setups that my brain starts immediately saying, this is what we have to contend with when you're coming into the cannabis space. You either have to be, completely no claims at all, and you don't get credit for what CBD can do because you're not willing to pay the FDA for those trials and for that approval.
Or you can't afford to pay the FDA.
You can't afford to pay, because presumably we would say Charlotte's Web could, and I'm not sure if they are. They're doing a lot of moves, so maybe they are behind the scenes so they don't get any more cease and desist. But in the reality of things, most people can't afford that, starting at $80,000 just to do the trial. Right.
And you could not even get approved too, like real talk. So like, it's like setting some money on fire and walking away.
That's true too. You could get not approved, or even worse, you could go into what I call limbo state, because the FDA can take as long as they want to approve you. So you could be in pending state for a while, and there are really no rules and no one to enforce, if there are rules, that you're past a certain point. Sometimes petitioning issues against the FDA, suing the FDA, Sue Cicely has done that. It is a really hard process. They very rarely say they're wrong. Up until recently, remember, cannabis was a gateway drug. So up until recently, it's Schedule 1. Up until recently, even hemp and making CBD from that was Schedule 1. Like, we just got to recognize that they're playing into the lie, and whatever the new lie is that week is what they got to cover their butt on.
Well, the FDA is coming for cannabis. Oh my God, you guys got to stay tuned for next week's show, because let me tell you about the tea that I have on the FDA and CBD edibles. I'm still putting that together. So the FDA is trying to come for us, while they're also letting their approved drug become over the counter.
Which is, like I said, chess moves while we're doing checkers, right? Mm-hmm. So we've got to be more mindful. I say the ultimate chess move is, that's why we tell you about it on the show, because I want consumers to know. We decide at the retail what we're going to get. So pay attention if you're seeing GW Farmer, if you're seeing Epidiolex. Yes, I understand if you're a parent and you need this, know that you can still go to non-FDA approved sources and get the same reliable history of advocacy. You can get all of those things. People actually care about the patient. 100%, I would tell anyone any day, choose Charlotte's Web over Epidiolex. If you want to.
I would too, but you know, the way the FDA is coming is they trying to knock us down, okay? They trying to knock us down. So we need to stay strong and we need to use our voice because nothing's going to change if the people don't fight for it. So that's why I felt so passionate about doing this main topic on virtual lobbying. You know, people see us all the time talking about we lobbied here, we was at this, we met this municipality. Well, truth be told, we can't do that right now. And we probably won't be able to do it for a while. I know I won't. You can reopen anything, anytime, whatever. I'm not going because I don't want to be the person to get the rest of my family sick. Because I probably wouldn't be sick, right? I would probably be healthy as a horse, but then everybody else coughing. So, you know, I really, really want to empower our listeners and our followers because the FDA, the DEA, the White House, and shit, even some of the state representatives, they coming for cannabis. And if we're not smart, they will keep prohibition going, even though 11 states have already seen the benefits of it. So I really wanted to talk about what are some of the benefits of virtual lobbying?
Well, the fact is that you are going to be able to still keep your message going. Lobbying has traditionally been, okay, the time that we all go and we show our power and our strength in numbers. I actually think we have a benefit where people who physically, because a lot of cannabis patients can't physically go and lobby, once you bring it into someone's home and into their living room, imagine a Zoom or imagine a GoToMeeting that has hundreds of little boxes because we have that many people. So I think virtual lobbying has the ability to see numbers grow exponentially. It also has the ability to force us to be innovative. Sometimes we come through with the same ideas. Oh, we're going to come and we're going to show. We have a one-pager. We have signs. Well, those things all can exist in the digital space, and we have to be more mindful about utilizing it in the digital space. And so I definitely think that there's huge opportunity for us to just keep expanding audience and messaging. And now that we are getting so many people who are forced to meet this way, all of the politicians and the municipalities are starting to see some of their gaps in their digital, and they're filling them in, which means now we should be able to have more access to provide this kind of voice and this type of virtual lobbying.
And you'll be able to see which of the people that are your officials are up to snuff in this digital age. You can't be governing me, making laws, signing this, saying these bills, and you can't use Zoom. Sorry, like, period, poo. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be able to be digital savvy in order to create laws that make sense in 2020. And so, you know, what are the first steps that I really want people to know is research local cannabis organizations. You know, especially if you don't want to be the leader of the virtual lobbying, see what local cannabis organizations are doing in your area, because a lot of them are putting together and zoning who you need to contact, what's their contact information, and they may already harass the person, because you really have to harass some of these politicians to get on their books, to really already created that lane for you to go ahead and talk to them.
That's so true. I mean, we work with Drug Policy Alliance. Shout out to Cassandra Federic, who is going to be the new executive director for DPA. That Black Girl Magic is real. Hey, girl. Shout out to Melissa Moore. We work with them in New York specifically, where New York has a lot of connectivity with their legislative leaders who are support of the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act. In truth, we were connected with the Office of Crystal People-Stokes through DPA, right? They connected us by bringing me in, I believe, for a meeting, and I was able to do some education. And once a legislator who was intent on trying to get other legislators on board see that you're an asset as far as education is concerned and information, accuracy of information and facts, it becomes spread like wildfire, and then you can easily start to be that person that provides that. But to initiate it is very hard. It is about having gatekeepers, and oftentimes normal DPA, they've been around, MPP, they've been around for a while, and they tend to be the gatekeepers, right? And also, let's be honest, there are trade associations, like there is a whole trade association for the registered organizations or the current owners in cannabis that are touching the plant in New York. Other states have that as well. They tend to have their own team at ladder lobbying. And so if you work for one of these companies or you're interested in working for one of those companies, you may find that also tying yourself to their efforts may get you access as well. But there's nothing worse than just showing up in Albany, in New York, for example, or showing up in DC and not knowing whose office you're going to, what's their agenda, why this is even important to them. That's what these organizations tend to do in like Cliff Notes versions, because they've been dealing with these leaders for some time. And so I don't want to pretend and act like any old body can start something. You can, but you still need collaboration and you need buy-in. And so oftentimes with new organizations like Minorities for Medical Marijuana, MCBA, Minority Cannabis Business Association, CEASE, we have had to start with the partnerships, even Doctors for Cannabis Regulation, our partnerships with DPA, then moving into the actual partnerships with the municipality that we're dealing with.
I mean, it's definitely, and they're going to pretend like, you know, not pretend, but they're going to make COVID-19 more their focus. But we got to let them know, we're not letting this cannabis prohibition go, period.
This is true.
So, because what you're going to see is a lot of the people that are making the laws, they're going to be really focused on, you know, how we're staying safe during COVID-19, but we're going to stay safe with cannabis, okay? And so really, you're right. You do have to tie yourself to a certain degree to an organization. But let's be fair. A lot of these states, especially in the middle heartland of America, they don't really have such a chapter or a group. So if that's the case, do you have a group of people, you know, 30 to 40 or 10 that may know another 10 that's willing to talk to your lawmakers in your local area? Because I would say if you don't have a cannabis organization, that's your next step after that. If you identified, hey, we don't have DPA in this area or we don't have MPP, what do we do? Well, first, you're going to email and call the scheduler over and over and over again. And this is the scheduler for your local congressional office. And you have to request a lobby by telephone or video conference. You can choose either one. I would always do video conference, even though, as you see on She Blaze, sometimes the internet does not want to be friendly, but it's a lot easier because you want that lawmaker to see your face when you tell them your story. And so after you've repeated this step quite a few times, you are going to get on the schedule. They give you a couple weeks before the actual schedule comes up so you could prepare yourself. And so our favorite part that Dasheeda loves to teach is strategy. After you get on the scheduler, what do? You go and you gather your group of people and you talk strategy.
That's so true. You're cute. I do. You don't want to waste your time or their time. And oftentimes you got all that effort to get on the schedule, and you literally probably get only 15 minutes of real time. You may be scheduled for 30 minutes. You may even be scheduled for 40 or 5 or an hour, but they are back to back to back. And oftentimes that's like, I'll be real, even with like priority scheduling, I have only gotten my quick 15 minutes. You get in and you get out. It is very pitch focused. So know who are going to be a participant in your virtual conference or video conference. Understand who's going to say what is very important as well. I'm actually curious, Ice, of what some of the suggestions that you put together, since we have been doing this for so long, in terms of, because you're a planner, you're our event person. Like, if you're, how does one make it so that it's seamless, at least in terms of the day?
Oh, well, I'm glad that you asked, because I love to delegate. You create your plan. You got to learn what bills you want. If there's not a bill, what do you want to talk about so they can create the bill, right? Because if it's not a bill, you can't be like, hey, we support this bill and we want you to support it. You have to start at, we need you to create this bill and then we'll support it. And so after you do that, you grab your group and then you give people roles. Everybody can't do everything. I am a baby strategist because I was trained, but ultimately I'm more of a planner. So I would give myself the role as, okay, this person is going to talk for 5 minutes, and they're going to keep it really short, and they're going to be the leader of going through the meeting so we don't get off topic. Then you have people who you want them to tell their story, so you can have the lawmaker know that this is really important and this is in your community. But that person's got to keep a 2-minute window. So don't get the guy that like go all around the world to tell this story. You get the person that's going to get straight to the point, hit them on the head to the point where you're right. The lawmaker's like, I need to meet this person again because they know what they're talking about. You also need at least 2 people to take notes. It's a huge deal to take notes during these meetings, because if you don't know what is being said or who said it, then how are you going to attack it the second time you lobby? You also are going to want somebody that knows who you're talking to, knows about their past, like, what bills have they previously sponsored? What are their beliefs on cannabis? Are you going in to change their mind on cannabis? Or are you going in to actually help put together a bill that will benefit cannabis? It's 2 different things at that point. So, you got to delegate roles to people, which is why I said, if you don't have an organization, because that's primarily what a cannabis organization or a drug progressive organization does. They already have those role people. So you're just here to, show your support. But if you're starting it from scratch on your own, you got to get all those roles together. And no one can have an excuse of saying they're too busy, because they're not. And so,
not in the COVID.
No. And this is the perfect time to hit it, because, at some point you'll realize that this lawmaker probably shouldn't be making our laws if they're not even willing to listen to the progressive movements of where we're at in 2020. And when you do this, you remind people of the day. I mean, you remind, set alerts, talk to them every day if you have to, just so they can know how important it is, because you do not get on a congressional member's schedule often. So when you do, you got to make an impact. And my suggestion is, yes, the meeting may be 30 to 40 minutes for that lawmaker in particular, but you and your group need to meet at least an hour before. So you guys are ready. Your internet is strong. Everyone's got their mic. Everyone knows their roles. And it will be seamless process when you actually get into the ability to talk to the lawmaker.
Woo! Well, those were definitely... I was loving every single bit of that. I wonder who trained you. No, I'm just kidding.
You brush your shoulders off, Hov.
But no. I'm flattered at the same time as I'm also impressed. There are all of that great points. You can tell we've started the process for a lot of states and been at the helm. You can also tell we probably come from roots of advocacy. Shout out to our mother. It is important that you also be prepared for disappointment. So their contingency planning that I would add to it. I've been rescheduled like 11,000 times when it comes to congressional folks. So you just want to make sure that you prepare that group for the chance of reschedule. And I often say, come up with what y'all already know is a good critical mass second date. What does that mean? A good critical mass of the group doesn't got to be everybody that can still do a second date. So you can come with that fast. Because if you get off the phone or if you get out of the exchange or you put time into, let me go check with the group, you may lose the little window of the scheduler. Oftentimes the scheduler, by the time they're rescheduling you or first or second time, they start to feel bad and they do try to figure out ways to work with you and figure out you squeezing in. You want to be pleasantly persistent as well, especially if you have to do a follow-up or if that is the intention. So making sure that you already have an email drafted on like the thank you and what that looks like. Because at the end of the day, no matter what the outcome is of how the day goes, you still need to do a thank you email. You still need to do a follow-up email. And so having that already drafted, so as soon as you end, you can press send for the most part with your signatories of the people who participated and contact information. Those are the type of things that we would prepare in advance for a client, for ourselves, so that it makes it just go a lot smoother. The other thing is anything that you are going to showcase, you want to make sure you have it in a PDF format of some sort. And so that all comes, sometimes I would suggest having a pre-package, but let's be real. You could send it in advance. The person is probably looking at it 5 minutes before they're about to jump on to your Zoom, and they're going to be late. And so they're going to still stutter it through. You will need to know how to share your screen if you're going to do that. But also, as part of that follow-up email, be sure to include all the collateral that you addressed and that you want someone to reference. I also suggest keeping things to one page. But that was, I mean, to me, those are the only things I added just because I'm thinking about the logistics of it. If you're one person, there's ways to make it feel like, oh, this person was so organized, or it was just a little bit seamless. And you may have to have a person, how I said there's a person for everyone. You may have a person that's just handling the documents, right? And just handling the design and making sure that those things get done. So, having people who are interested in helping is important. If you write out, again, here are some of the things that we know we need. And I'll just last say that stories are so important. Our uncle says that facts tell, stories sell. That's real. As much as we can say a lot of facts, like the fact that New York has arrested more people than anybody else in the country for marijuana possession, that's a fact. The story of the people who have been incarcerated and what their life looks like after even one encounter with the police officer, those are the things that really sell to a to someone who is in your administration or for the municipality, someone who's a leader. They're going to remember that story, and so you want both. You want a balance of both.
Yes. And so, just to round out our main topic, really, let's hypothetically say, you don't got a cannabis organization because you live in the middle of nowhere and you don't even know anybody because you still in the middle of nowhere. Maybe you're lobbying solo. What does that look like? Well, I would suggest if you're lobbying solo, you really want to focus on a bill that is already in play. Don't just come in trying to get them to formulate a bill, because you by yourself, it's just not enough, unfortunately. Definitely lobby solo, but push for a certain bill while you're lobbying solo. And find your state officials, your local officials who has the ability to either sponsor the bill or endorse the bill. So, find their contact information and call them and let them know that you want them to support this bill because you're in their local area and you know that this bill will benefit your local area. And then tell people, if you, even though you may not know anyone, if you go to the grocery store for your essentials, tell people to call their official and give them the information, because if enough people call, then you are going to start the movement.
That's so true. I want to shout out Marcus Harkis, who is a fan of She Blaze, and he has been a solo lobbyer for a long time in Minnesota, which has not a great program, but it do have a medical program on the books. Business-wise, I won't get into it. We'll have to have a special.
We done already. I don't know.
Yeah. But we will have Marcus. Maybe we need to have him on as a guest to talk about it. But he's very aggressively been able to start to formulate a group to support, but he does a lot individually. When I watch him live occasionally, I'm like, dang, brother, man, be on the move. But that's the type of fire you got to have in your belly. And so if you're in a state that is struggling and is not there yet, know that you do have virtual support. Actually probably have more virtual support than ever before, because even the folks who don't live in your state and maybe you don't know anyone locally, my guess is that maybe you know people more globally, and you can at least bring them on to say, I don't need you to say anything, but I just want you to stand with me. And by stand with me, it means turn your cameras on and stand with me. So again, the difference between a virtual and an in-person is that virtual means I can bring my folks from Africa that I know, and we just gelled on hair stuff, right? I can bring folks globally together and that say, hey, this is how it's working in our country. So, it's just important to recognize that once it becomes virtual, it opens up the globe for us.
That is true. Well, I'm so glad we educated these people because they really, really need it. But it is time to, make our way on. And peace signs. Peace up, A-Town down. No, I'm just kidding. Oh my God, these memes been killing me lately. So I just been super ridiculous. Anyway, Dasheeda, do you have any final takeaways for our followers?
Yes, I am going to be on a free webinar tonight, 4/18, kick off your 420 right with education information. I'm partnering with Can-Inclusive and Smart, and I'm going to be bringing you how to succeed in Cannabis 101. And a few folks are able to get the ebook for free, so we got a giveaway going. And if you want to get the ebook on a super, super discount, you can use the code SMART7.99 and join us tonight. We'll put that link inside our comments. You can find me as always at WeedHead.com. And I'm going to be changing my IG name. I think I told y'all last week. So stay tuned because we're going to make an announcement this week about it.
Oh, so fun. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, well, that is lit. I can't wait for tonight. A lot of people are doing a lot of things in the cannabis industry. This COVID has actually brought us together closer than ever. I was joking with someone the other day, like, I ain't never seen this many people in cannabis industry work together. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, this person don't lie. I didn't even know. You never know the power of the internet. But we actually have a bunch of things going on this week as far as like different webinars and lives that we're participating in. And you can always find out by visiting the WeedHead.com, because I do have y'all up to date. Hello. And so watch She Blaze on Facebook live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. and listen to us anytime on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, or iHeartRadio. And when you're on the WeedHead trying to figure out what we got coming up for the 420 week, make sure you subscribe to us too.
Absolutely. We will make sure you are in the know.
No, that's right. Well, thank you. Have a great week, you guys.
420 week, y'all.